3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Lightforge tier list valuation stream. We are doing Ashes of Outland preview. We don't know. We're not in the game yet. Nothing's released. But we got all the scores because we got an algorithm. And you can listen to all that in the 2 episodes before this, which went over what the meta's going to be like. It went over how we do the algorithm, sort of. And then it went over the top 13 cards, which are going to be most impactful. We are now going to go over the other, 20-something cards that will be in the game that are neutral. And they are going to be the cards that are meh, the cards that are and the cards that are legendary. Because you're not going to be offered them that much. Okay, so let's continue on this. Let's talk about the most relevant stuff first. Here's a card that barely didn't make the previous episode. It is a Waste Warden. It's a 111. 111 is like a Mani Berserker Evasive Feywing level. You're not thrilled to have it in your deck, but you don't really care too much. You'll take them. You're good. Yeah, exactly. And it's an epic card, so you're not going to see it that often anyway. It is a 5-mana 3/3 Battlecry, deal 3 damage to a minion, and all others of the same minion type. So imagine board clearing all the Murlocs off your opponent's board. Or, more realistically, imagine dealing 3 damage to an opponent's minion.
This is look, this is good. We give, the algorithm gives it some credit, because minion types are a thing now. Mm-hmm. For example, if you're facing Demon Hunter, he's going to have a decent amount of demons. If you're facing Hunter, he's going to have, more than one beast sometimes. So we give it credit. Now, here's the thing. There were metas before where a 5-mana 3/3 and you could choose to deal 3 damage to a minion would have been, really, really good, right? Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, here, it's just pretty good. Good. Period. Yeah. That's it. So yeah, we give it a little bit of credit for it. It's just, once again, I was saying during the break as well, remember, these scores have just been pushed down and truncated because of all the freaking
what's the 5-mana 4/2 that's dealing 2 damage? What's that? Stormpike? Stormpike Commando's a 94. Just to give you a kind of comparison. This one's a 111, so this one's almost 20 points higher. Because it deals 1 extra damage and has.
And note that 20 points in the midsection is
huge.
A lot. Yeah. It's huge. It's huge. Yeah. So we're saying that this is
much better.
Much better, which I think everyone would agree.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's not. Yeah. Stormpike Commando is not a very good card. If you want this card to be higher, you're gonna have to move up Stormpike Commando, and no one thinks Stormpike Commando is better than a 94.
Yeah.
I think people don't even think Stormpike Commando is a 94. And Stormpike Commando can go face. This can't even go face.
Yep. All right. Cool. Next, we have Scavenging Shivarra. This is a 105 on the tier list. So this is good. I mean, this is where Mad Bomber is. This is Harvest Golem. This is Yeti.
Faceless Manipulator. Sunwalker.
Yeah.
Sunwalker is a 6-mana card.
Yeah. So this is a 6-mana, 6/3 demon. Battlecry, deal 6 damage randomly split among all other minions. I think some people will be surprised at why this is so, quote, low. Do you want to explain why this isn't higher?
Because if you have more minions or a similar amount of minions than your opponent, it's unplayable. Because even if you have fewer minions than your opponents, in terms of stuff, you still have to trade them all before you play this, and you may not want to do that because it's unplayable until turn 6 anyway. Because I don't know, it's just a 6/3 if your opponent has nothing on there. If it's just an empty board, even, right? It's just a 6/3. What's a fire elemental, right? A fire elemental is a 6-mana 6/5 and it deals 3 damage. So this loses 2 health, so it should probably deal 4 damage to your opponent's minions. You're not going to deal 4 damage to your opponent's minions more often than not, and it's unplayable so many times.
Yeah, and here's the thing. You don't know exactly how it's going to distribute. So even in those times in which it is... Your best case scenario is if they only have 1 minion. So you know what's going to happen. There's no other minions on board. They play something with 6 health. Bam, you got them. But if they have a board that's, even slightly more complicated than that. They have 2 minions and 6 damage doesn't exactly kill it. Well, most of the time you're going to have 1 minion that you really want to kill and the other one that you don't care about so much. That's just how it is, right? Or they have 3 minions and this just isn't enough and you have no idea how it's going to turn out as well. So just look, the fact that it is a 105 is pretty good.
It's useful.
Like it's
you
useful.
Sunwalker's okay to have in your deck.
Yeah. Like it's still pretty good for all the downsides it has. So I think that this is fairly sort of evaluated. I can certainly see some people looking at this and thinking it might be higher. I think some people will agree with us and be like, oh yeah, this isn't that good. But this is one I can definitely see people having different opinions on. Yep.
All right. Next, Scrapyard Colossus. This is the one. Oh, this card. I need to rant about this card. It's the same score as the previous card, which means it's a
105.
It's a Sunwalker. I'm going to just hammer this into people's heads. It is a Sunwalker good level of card. Scrapyard Colossus is a 10 mana 7/7 taunt that has a death rattle that says basically summon another 7/7 taunt. When it came out, freaking Reddit on Arena HS exploded with like, oh my god, what a good card! This is what 10 mana cards are, so good. It's a 10 mana card. It only has 14 worth of stats in total. And it's not even 14 worth of stats. You can look at the 7 health as like just health. So it's like a 7/14 with like a little bit extra health because, you won't get the perfect amount of damage in it. It's not like, you don't want it in your deck. Just like Sunwalker used to be a card that would be a positive to have in your deck compared to the average minion in your deck. Scrapyard Colossus, and now it is no longer that. Now you would not want to have a Sunwalker in your deck if you can have, if you could just refresh your offerings, and you would have taken a Sunwalker, you'd probably do it. Same with Scrapyard Colossus. This isn't even just like a non-premium card. It's like a Yeti card. This is like a Yeti, a Sunwalker. Yeah. Like, it just doesn't, like, at 10 mana, you know what you get at 10 mana? Oh, you get so much at 10 mana these days. And this is in the meta right now, where we admit that the game is going to go to 10 mana.
Yeah.
The game is going to go there. It's not good enough for 10 mana to be premium. It's fine. It's a Yeti, right? Like, you're not, like, super sad to have it in your deck. If you need a big card, this is a great card to put in a deck that needs a big card.
Yeah.
But it's not special.
No, for 10 mana, you're expecting so much. You're expecting so much at 10 mana. This doesn't deliver what you need at 10 mana. This delivers a little bit. Look, the fact that you have a 10 mana card that's at 105, it means, like, it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for 10 mana, it's just good. But good for 10 mana doesn't cut it. You need it to be game-breaking in order for a 10 mana card to be, like, high. And this isn't it. This is an Ultra Sword with Taunt.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's an Ultra Sword with Taunt. It's a better Ultra Sword with Taunt.
Yeah. But I don't think anyone was back, or memes aside, I don't think that many people were crazy about Ultra Sword. Yeah. Would it be better with Taunt? Absolutely, it would.
But when this card came out, everyone was like, not everyone, but like enough people were like, oh my god, like, well, look at it. It's like, okay, yes, it power creeped other 10 mana neutrals by a bit.
Yeah.
By quite a bit. But other 10 mana neutrals were all crap. So this is the kind of power creep that you don't mind. They're basically just fixing what 10 mana neutrals can be.
Yeah. So look, this is a very fair card. This is like fair. Yeah. This is absolutely fair. And what did we say before? If it's fair, it's not good. Yeah. It's just not good enough because fair cards don't do anything. And this is absolutely fair for 10 mana. Mm-hmm. If you don't think the amount of stats that you get with this is fair, then you have to reevaluate your expectation for 10 mana. Yeah. There's a huge difference between 8 mana and 10 mana.
Yes, because that's 2 more turns that you have to figure out what to do with a dead card in your hand.
Yeah. So if you're looking at like the difference between 6 mana and 8 mana, the gap, the game gap, the theoretical gap between 6 and 8 is much smaller than 8 and 10.
Mm-hmm.
Because of what you are able to do and because of all the other cards that you are able to play that have such a huge effect on those turns, such that it's a wide chasm between 8 and 10. It's just like a sizable gap from 6 to 8. That's how you need to look at the game. And because that's how Blizzard looks at the game. That's how games actually operate. So yeah, I would say, like, when I first looked at this, I was like, oh, it's a 105. That's kind of high, but acceptable. So yeah.
I mean, when you have a 10 mana card, it has to have some kind of taunt or initiative. And this one, not, you know, to its credit, it's not just Ultra Sword with taunt. It also can't be hard removed. Like, you had to do it twice. So it's like an Ultra Sword with taunt that forces you to engage with it somewhat fairly. Like, it's not only fair, it's forcing your opponents to engage with it fairly.
Yep.
For the most part. And so yeah, I love it. All right. As far as 10 mana cards go, that's probably the most well-designed card they could have come up with.
It's super fair. Super fair. Okay.
Now, okay, we get to
this is an interesting one.
Okay, so this is a 98. We've gone down from 105 to a 98. Remember, that means it's 2 points below the average card you're offered. Definitely like 20 points below the average card in your deck. This is your first dormant card, which is a keyword introduced in this expansion. I'll go over all that means. It's Imprisoned Vilefiend. It's a 2-mana, 3/5 demon with Rush. But it stays dormant for 2 turns, which means you play it on turn 2, turn 3 comes around, one of its 2 things lights up. You can't do anything with it. It's not on the board. Like, you can't interact with it. Your opponent can't remove it. If your opponent flame strikes it, nothing happens. It doesn't count as a minion on your board. Then you do your turn. Then your opponent does their turn. And then when it comes back to you again, the other light comes up, and it pops onto the board, and it gains Rush for that turn.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what dormant for 2 turns means. It means it's just not really a part of the board, except for the fact that it takes up a spot for 2 turns. This is we've seen it before in Stasis Dragon, which was in Taverns of Time, and that was remember what the stats were? I think it was a 4-mana 7/7 with Rush.
I forget.
And Dormant 2, it was something like that, but it definitely gained a lot more stats than this guy does. This guy, for being dormant for 2 turns, gains a total of like 3 health and Rush from what it should be doing, whereas Stasis Dragon, from what it should be doing, gained like double the amount of stats and Rush. Mm-hmm. It was a 6-mana 10/10 with Rush. That was what Stasis Dragon was. So Stasis Dragon was a decent card. I think it was like, we rated it like a little better than a Yeti at the time. And Yetis keep getting worse as swings get higher, so it's probably even better than a Yeti now. But this card's worse than a Yeti because you get less stats. So you want to go over how the dormant ability impacts how your curve works and all that stuff?
Yeah, sure. So here's one of those things that we need to consider in terms of dormant as well. Look, a 2-mana 3/5 is really good. But how relevant is, for example, that 3 attack when it comes to turn 4? And this is if you play it. And also, how relevant is that 3 attack when your opponent knows that the 3 attack is coming? This is different than just a rush, right? This is very different than a rush in which you rush it out. And even if your opponent knows that such a card is meta relevant and is in the meta, it's very different than you having devoted mana to it being on the board for 2 turns so that your opponent can dictate trades and play around it. And once it comes out, you'd much rather this be more offensively statted than a 3/5 with Rush. So, like, once it has become active, that 3 attack, oh man, you're really wishing it was like 4 attack, right? You're really wishing it was 4 attack. You're really wishing it was 5 attack or something. So all these things put together, like, yes, the Rush is good. The Rush saves it from being a trash tier card.
Yeah, so it's a 2-drop.
Right now, it's a 2.
It's acceptable as a 2-drop.
Yeah, so this is one of those things in which I think that when you look at it, at first I was just like, yeah, this isn't that bad. And then I'm like, wow, this is really underwhelming. Those 2 turns are quite important, right? Yep. And in a meta in which so many things happen in the span of 2 turns, you giving up, because a lot of people are like, no, you get the board back when it when it awakens.
That's why it's an acceptable 2-drop. Like, kinda.
You don't.
You kind of get it back. I'll math it. I'll math it out after you. To show you exactly what happens. Oh, you want to do it now? Yeah. Okay. So let's just play it out, right? Your opponent plays a Croc. You play this card. Your opponent plays a 3/4. You play a 3/4. Your opponent you play a 3/4. Then it's your opponent's turn. He throws the Croc in and the 3/4, and he has a 3/1 left. And he plays a Yeti, and then your turn again. You play a Yeti. Now you have a 3/5 that pops out that has Rush. Your 3/5 hits his 3/1. You have a 3/2. Now you have a Yeti, and then your Yeti trades positively with his Yeti. Right, but he's like
this
one
is
turn
like vanilla gameplay.
Yeah, but that's what you do in Curve, right? So in vanilla gameplay, and it doesn't change it if I use Raptors and like 4/3s instead of 3/4s. Your Imprisoned Vilefiend just ends up being a 3/1 instead of a 3/2, and it would end up trading into the Yeti the same exact way in time. So it is a functional 2-drop when you play it on Curve. It is actually like better than most 2-drops that you can play on Curve. Like, it's better than a Raptor or a Croc, because it can't be removed as easily, and it always functions to even you out on the board, always. So it's like always getting that. It's like but the downside is that you can't eat a smaller thing either. So if you originally were going to play a Croc and it was going to eat a 2/1 and then be able to deal more damage, like, this does it later, which makes it strictly worse. But your opponent doesn't have 1-drops most likely, and so it was probably just going to trade with a 2-drop, or it could have even been dominated by a 3-drop. Now, by doing this delay, you make sure it is never dominated, and it always trades the way you want it to trade, at the cost of not being able to eat anything earlier. But at a 2-drop level, it was never going to eat anything earlier anyway, right? Your opponent had to play a 1-drop. So this is like the best case scenario for this kind of card on Curve.
Yep.
And it only stabilizes on the Curve. So on the Curve, it functions as a 2-drop. It functions as a better 2-drop than most of your other like normal 2-drops at this level. Now, consider if you don't play it on turn 2. If you don't play it on turn 2, it has no curve effect. So what you're really doing is delaying 2 turns before you get a 3/5 rush, which is like a middle-sized kind of card. And at that point, when you lose the board more, you can't just get it back in vanilla gameplay, right? It will never happen because things are too complicated then. So, as a 2-drop, it functions a little better than a Raptor. But afterwards, the fact that it may not impact the board at all, the fact that you may need the Raptor to like freaking deal some face damage or something, or like remove your opponent's minion. Because during this time, if your opponent doesn't do the trades and forces you to do the trades, you're not just suffering, you're also suffering face damage. Right? Like, this delay is not penalty-less. It puts your opponent in charge of the initiative on the board. It gives them the ability to use any kind of buffs, any kind of whatevers, right? It gives them the ability to go to your face. So, you are correct that you are on the Curve, but you make yourself very vulnerable to like tricks that your opponent can play. And these days, your opponent's going to play something. And later on, you need to be able to play this on a turn in which 2 turns later it still matters. Or else you've just like got a dead card in your hand, even though it was a 2-drop.
Yep. So look, a card like this could be good, right? And we would see some dormant cards.
Some dormant cards are very good.
Are ridiculous. Are stupidly good. So you don't want to look at this and be like, okay, so you guys think all dormant cards are bad? No. This dormant card isn't that good. Some dormant cards are ridiculously strong. But because of the payoff that you get with this, it's not really much of a payoff. I think you sort of laid it out perfectly. If you play it on turn 2, it's a better than average 2-drop.
If nothing else happens.
If the game is in a very vanilla state, which it isn't.
Yeah.
And so if you think that giving up that initiative for this, because people in chat are saying right now, it's like, well, you can bank tempo, right? Banked tempo is so much less valuable than tempo now. Tempo now is so much more important just like in investing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like sort of like the ability to use money right now is very important. That's why like
Well, in the Hearthstone, it's because it converts to choices. If
it
you have
converts
tempo
to
now,
choices.
you have the board, you have the initiative, you have the ability to control your trades and whatever.
Yeah.
If you don't, then at best, at absolute best, your opponent gets face damage on you. And that's quite a bit of face damage. If you look at 2 turns of face damage, it's like 6 damage, you know, about on average. Dealing 6 damage to your face for being able to delay your tempo and banking the tempo, I wouldn't do that. Like, would you take 6 damage to your face for banking tempo? That's the best case scenario. Then the worst case scenario
is you settling for that low interest rate CD.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
you're in an environment of Twin Tyrants.
Yeah, exactly. When you're in an environment of Twin Tyrants, you're settling for that low interest rate CD and saying like, yeah, in a year I'd like mine like 2%. And maybe, and yeah, in some turns, in some financial environments, I guess that's good. But on average, that's really bad. What you actually want a lot of times is, you know, for you to be able to spend that 2 mana and card in other ways such that you can use that to snowball.
Yep. To give you a comparison, Bloodfriend Raptor is 2 points higher, and Croc is like 5 points lower. So it is a 2-drop. It has some upsides because it's better on curve than those other cards if your opponent doesn't do anything fancy, but it's worse if your opponent does do something like fancy. And it's got more card advantage later on because you have a 3/5 body instead of a 3/2 body, but it's delayed twice later on, and later on you may run into the point in which in 2 turns the game's already ended. So your card did nothing, right? Instead of like actually doing something. So it's just a very balanced, neutral 2-drop for this ability, which is like great and all, but balanced neutral 2-drops by the classic set in this is terrible for this like, you know, environment. So I'm not saying don't pick it. You're gonna pick Raptors and Crocs, but just know that it's not helping your deck.
Yep.
It's like filling a spot.
Okay.
All right, let's move on.
We can move on.
Now we're on to Supreme Abyssal, which is a 90. At this point, you're in your Shattered Sun Clerics, you're in your Darkscale Healer, you're in your Jungle Panther.
Oh, Shattered Sun Cleric.
Used to be a good card.
It's just a fair card. And, oh god, you have fallen so hard. You're still okay. But yeah, we're at the point where if you have a Shattered Sun Cleric, you're just like, it's a Shattered Sun.
Okay. So this is a 8 mana 12/12 demon, and it cannot attack heroes. So it's a lot of stats, but it has no initiative, and it will never go face.
Yeah. So it's not good. 90 is not good. All right, guys.
90 is not good. You don't want 90 cards. So you may be tempted to think that this is a good card because it has more stats than it should, and stats in the arena are usually good. But if you can't attack your opponent's hero, that means that a lot of this 12 attack is functionally useless.
Yep.
So it has maybe a 6/12, which for 8 mana looks a lot less impressive.
Yep. It's not terrible.
Yeah.
Like, here's the thing.
I take Jungle Panthers.
The fact that it's still a 90 is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I see one comment, it's like, oh, people are going to underrate this. Yeah, I think some people will say that will think that this is garbage tier.
It's not garbage tier at all.
It's not garbage tier.
It's a 90.
Here's the thing, you will have 90 cards in your deck.
You will definitely have 90 cards in your deck.
You will have 90 cards in your deck. Once we get to like the 50s, you should not have 50s in your deck. That's the thing. So you will have 90 rated cards in your deck. So yeah, this is like sometimes a draftable card, which might surprise a lot of people.
Yep.
It's okay.
If you're looking at other large cards around this, it's like a Wasteland Scorpid. I think that's a good comparison. Wasteland Scorpid is basically the same score, and it's a 3/9 poisonous. This guy basically has poisonous, because 12 damage is going to kill anything. And it has more health than a Wasteland Scorpid, but it's also 1 mana more, and it can't even deal 3 damage to face. And for whatever it matters, it's a demon instead of a beast. So it's similar to a Wasteland Scorpid, but for 1 mana more, for 3 more health, which is a questionable trade at the 7 to 8 mana side. Okay. All right. Next up, Dolphin Navigator. It's 88, so basically the same exact score as all these other guys we're talking about. It's a 4-mana 4/4 Murloc. Battlecry, give your other Murlocs +1/+1. You won't have many other Murlocs. Not much to talk about here. This guy's in Battlegrounds.
Battlegrounds, and Battlegrounds, this thing is going to be great for Murloc mid-game, which I'm going to hate. But anyways, look, that's it. It's an 88. It's basically like, what's a 4-mana 4/4? It's an 88.
All right. Now we're at 78, which is Rustsworn Cultist. That's a big jump down. We're now at the level of like Murloc Raider and Gurubashi and like Frostwolf Grunts and like War Golems.
It's not good. It's not great. You might have a card in your deck that's like a 78 rated. You know?
Yeah, but this is like the bottom feeding barrel of your deck. And this guy's a 4-mana 3/3. Battlecry, give your other minions Death Rattle, summon a 1/1 demon. So you need at least 2 other cards to make this like kind of a normal amount of stats for 4 mana.
And
you're not going to get it. Right? Yeah, you're backloading, and you're not going to get it on curve most likely. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about this. No one should think it's a good card, or at least not a great card. If you're doing like a very token heavy deck, this may be a decent. Like if you want to like set it up so that you have a more consistent Savage Roar finish or a more consistent what do you call it, like Bloodlust finish, this could be like a decent card for those kind of decks. But you got to go for speed. You got to know what you're doing with this card. Don't just do it because you have a normal mid-range deck. Like it's not gonna be good.
Okay, this next one, I fought for it to be a little bit higher.
It is coming in at a 67, which is around where I don't even know what a good comp for this is. Magma Rager. This is around where Magma Rager is, which is also 3 mana.
So this is Blistering Rot. It is a 3-mana 1/2. At the end of your turn, summon a Rot with stats equal to this minion's. Look, so it'll have slightly different scores depending on classes because of buffs and everything. We've seen something somewhat similar in Shrieking Shroom,
which is a lot better because it's same stats, but it summons a random 1-drop instead of a 1/2.
So is a random 1-drop better than a second Rot? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, like significantly better.
Yeah. So look, here's the thing, and you can think about all those great situations in which you leave this on the board, it summons a Rot, and then your opponent can't deal with either Rot, and then suddenly you have 4 Rots. Oh man, I have 4 Rots.
Well, no, you don't have 4 Rots. A Rot is not a Blistering Rot. A Rot is just a 1/2.
Oh yeah. Oh god, it's even worse than I thought.
Oh, you thought it would keep summoning. Okay, that makes more sense. I'm like, why are you fighting for this card? I remember this discussion. I'm like, what are you seeing in this? It's terrible. Okay, so the Rots don't keep regenerating. The Rots are just a 1/2. You know what? This is the bottom. I
fully agree with this.
Okay. So no need to talk about it. It's just bad.
All right, there's no need to talk about it. So and with Shrieking Shroom, there were always and there continue to be 1-drops with like really good upside, like really good upside that have awesome death rattles, that have cool effects, that are like 2/2s, that are 1/3s. This doesn't give you any of that.
No,
it's just a lot.
All right, next is an epic card. You're not going to see it a lot, or maybe you will because everyone's going to try to meme it. It's Replica Trolltron. It's a 61. Don't take these cards. 4 mana 3/3. At the end of your turn, transform a neighbor into a copy of this. This actually perpetuates forever.
Yes.
So if you have a very tokeny deck with very small tokens, it is potentially good. I don't think. Okay, so this one is one of the ones that's like half in the algorithm and half not. I don't think it's doing exactly this. I think it may be underestimating how good it is in Paladins and Shamans because of the hero power. But even if you hero power, it is 6 mana for 2 3/3s. Right? And then you're going to have trouble playing any bigger cards in the future because you can't. So it just wasn't worth our brain damage to do it. We may do it in a better way over the course of the next week. Yeah.
It's higher in Paladin and
Okay.
Shaman. It's not that much higher. It's like 10 points higher.
Okay, so this is a little okay. So maybe it is doing it the right way. I think what it's not doing is it's not taking into account that the new things are also replicotrons, like intelligently. But anyway, all this is to say that whatever score this actually is, it will not be good, and it would have taken a really long time to do this exactly right. So I know for a fact this is not done exactly right.
Yeah. So that's sort of the asterisk here. You guys can pick it in Paladin and Shaman if like
no,
not like, but don't pick it over anything good. Also,
no.
yes, chat. This is a 61, but in Paladin, it scores a 69.
Ooh.
Do with that as you will. All right, it is a 69 in Paladin.
For the record, Corehound is a 77. I don't know what it is in Paladin, but it's a 77 overall. So 69 is terrible. Don't pick it.
It's pretty bad.
Like, at that level, what you really want are high swing cards, because it's so bad anyway. Like, at that level, you want your big game hunters, which is, like, not good, but, like, when you hit the swing, you at least hit it, right?
Yeah.
Alright. Next is a card that, I don't know, no one seemed very excited about this. I thought people may have been more excited about this. It's terrible. But I thought people may mistakenly have been more excited about this, but they weren't. So good for you guys. But you guys also were not terribly excited about the, what is it called? The Artificer. And that was actually good, like really good. So I think you guys are just kind of under excited about curve cards on 1 and 2, over curve cards on 1 and 2 drops overall.
Yep.
So 1 mana, 1/4, Soulbound Ashtongue. Whenever this minion takes damage, also deal that amount to your hero.
Ouch.
We've seen this before in a Warlock card that was a 2 mana 4/3 that had the same thing. This one has more health, so you're going to take more damage, presumably. And this also only gives you like 1 extra stat instead of 2 extra stats. So it's just like,
why can't it give stats to attack? That's the thing. Like, man, this is a 1/4.
Yeah.
You don't want more health on this. You want more attack.
Yeah.
Like, no.
You know? Yep.
No.
Don't do it. You're going to lose so much health.
There are some cards in which it's good because of the stat distribution. This is bad because it gave it like the... It would only be worse if it was like a 0/5. It's just like, just punch this and deal damage. It's just so bad.
Troubleman72 in chat says, now that 12/12 demon can go face.
That's true.
Just don't do it. You're gonna regret it. Yeah, like, God, I don't know. Like, maybe if you're like a priest and like you're a tempo priest and you don't care about your health and like you desperately need another 1-drop. I don't know.
Also, we've been, if you remember years ago, you like really, if you look at the amount of life you're willing to exchange for a stat, that has changed so much.
That's dropped a lot.
That's dropped a lot. In previous metas, like years past, you would exchange like 10 health for like 2 stats. Yeah. Now, that 2 stats, you might only want to exchange like 3, 4 health? Is 4 like... I don't know. Like I'm not like with the algorithm right now, but yeah.
Yeah, you probably want to exchange like 4 health. That's about right. I think.
Yeah, like 4 health. And if you guys think about your games, I think you'll agree with that. It's like health matters more now because you need that cushion a bit more, and also just because of how the games operate.
Yeah, and stats matter less, right?
Yeah. Like because stats matter less, and health matters more because of the game state and the swings. A card like this is, I mean, it's always going to be pretty bad, but like, it's real bad.
Yeah, it's really bad here. All right, next up is Infectious Sporeling, which some people pitched as like a number 1 card. We were asking chat before, like, what do you think the number 1 neutral is? And nobody guessed Artificer until like way down the list, like after a dozen other guesses. But Infectious Sporeling was one of the guesses.
Okay, so look, I thought this was at least a decent card. You talked me out of it. I'm going to leave this totally to you. So for those of you in the initial Merps mindset of like, I think this is like a decent card, tell me why it is trashed here.
Okay, this card is about the same score as an Angry Chicken. It is a 1 mana 1/2. After this damages a minion, turn it into an Infectious Sporeling. So whatever it hits becomes an Infectious Sporeling.
This.
And then whatever that Infectious Sporeling hits becomes an Infectious Sporeling. And then etc. etc. Okay? So, the way to use this card, or wondering how to use this card, is two ways. One way is your opponent has a board of only big stuff and you have like very little things on your board. Kind of weird. It doesn't happen too often. But then you play an Infectious Sporeling, and then you don't play other cards that are minions. Like, I don't know, you draw cards or use your mana some other way. And you see all the conditionals coming in, right? Then, this 1 mana Infectious Sporeling, which the 1 mana doesn't matter all that much. Oh my god, Merps' chocolate chip cookies delivered by his wife. I have been requesting chocolate chip cookies from my fiance for like a month now, and we have them, and she just keeps not making them for me. Okay.
Do your job and talk about
She's giggling in the background now.
Do your job and talk about the Sporeling.
Okay. So in that limited set of circumstances, for only 1 mana, after you've wasted 7 other mana doing whatever else that you couldn't drop a minion on, you can turn one of your opponent's giant things into an Infectious Sporeling. Now, Infectious Sporelings are only worth 1 mana, so you've gotten a decent removal out of it. But then you have to have like a setup plan and a plan for what to do afterwards when your opponent still has the board and is just down 1 big guy. Like, you're still going to lose, is basically my point. The more easy way to play Infectious Sporeling is you have the board, or you're fighting for the board in a way where your opponent either has nothing left on the board by the end of your turn, or your opponent has only a big thing left by the end of your turn, and you play an Infectious Sporeling. In that case, your opponent takes his big thing, hits one of your other guys, next turn you Infectious Sporeling into the remaining body, and then you take one of your other guys and hit that Infectious Sporeling so that you still have the Infectious Sporeling on your side by the end of the turn. Because if your opponent ever gets the Infectious Sporeling and can use it, it is very bad for you, because at that point, you cannot play a big thing without like board clearing them first. And if you were going to board clear them first, why would you play an Infectious Sporeling? And if your opponent ever has a smallish card, like a 2-drop or like a 3-drop, they will just get your Infectious Sporeling, basically. You're just like giving it to them. So, in all normal scenarios, besides you are extremely on the board, or you are extremely off the board and have a lot of stuff that you can do without affecting the board besides removing opponent's smaller minions, this Infectious Sporeling is unplayably bad. In the very narrow range of situations where you already have a lot of stuff on the board, and yet somehow you want a 1 mana card that's going to like get way more bang for the buck, which is almost never. At that point, you can just play normal tempo-wise and still be okay, because you're really ahead on the board. Or in the case where you have a lot of single target removals or small damage board clears, and you can like use your mana wisely and just drop an Infectious Sporeling at the end. To take care of the big thing, and your opponent doesn't remove it, like, then this gets some value. So in a super narrow percent of times, it will get 1 extra mana's worth of value, which means even less so than that, right? It'll get like almost Gastropod value, because you still give the opponent a Sporeling. You don't actually kill off the opponent.
That's the thing. So the way that you put it was like, in sometimes, not all the time, and sometimes it is a gastropod that gives your opponent a gastropod on the board, right? Which is the way you put it. So I think that's a good way to think about it. And then you can say, well, sometimes the effect of the gastropod is so necessary that you're willing to do that. But then you are actually really limited. Once again, if we're conducting situations in which it is really good, we can always think of that, but we have to think about on average how good it is, right? Look, at the end of the day, do I necessarily agree with it being this low? No. Do I think that it should be higher than, like, let's say a 70? I don't know. Maybe not. I think 75 is like the limit of where I would put it, because of the fact that, like, yeah, it's annoying. It's somehow good. Like, it's sometimes good. But the fact that you're giving them a Sporeling afterwards as well. And then once again, because I see this in the chat, it's like, oh, but you could do it and then you can remove the Sporeling. Anytime you do something extra with it, anytime you have that extra ability, you have to count that in. And any time in which for a 1-mana card, you have to sort of clean up all of this stuff, set it up and clean it up and do all of this stuff, there's a cost to that. There's always a cost. Once again, you don't always have Arcane Explosion. You don't always have a Holy Smite. You don't always have a ping available. All of this we've talked about before with other cards, and same thing here. You won't always have a 2 damage to clean up the Sporeling that you turn theirs into. We will find situations in which it is good, though. I advocated it strongly for it being higher, but I will say for me, I still can't see it higher than a 75.
Don't pick it. It's bad.
Yeah.
It also the more like limited circumstances you're thinking of, the more you leave it to RNG for those circumstances to come up, which makes it even worse. All right. So finally, we have the worst neutral card by 1 point in this in the Ashes of Outland set. It is a Terrorguard Escapee. It is a 3-mana 3/7 that summons 3/1/1 Huntresses for your opponent. It is a demon. I know some people like these kinds of cards. We generally do not. This doesn't have taunt. The one that was like slightly more valuable was like the 2/6 2-drop that did it with taunt, because their 1/1s have to at least go into the 2/6 to like do anything, assuming that like the board is being contested over. This one doesn't even do that. So as long as your opponent has board space, they get to like be very flexible with how they're destroying you. And if you're thinking about combining it into the future with a board clear or whatever, like Merps keeps saying, you don't always have an Arcane Explosion. You have to use up an Arcane Explosion, and then whoop-de-doo, for 3 mana, you get 3 more health in the late game. Like, it's just not, like, it's too situational to play early on, like, as a curve thing, and later on, it's not big enough for you to deal with all the conditionals.
Yeah. Giving 1/1s to your opponent is really bad. Like, I think some of you guys might look at this and be like, wait. If it just trades evenly on the board, this is a 3/4, and you guys rate 3/4s quite high, right? Like 3/4s are very much higher. So remember, this tier list is for, we're assuming that you have like a 75% win rate. You want to keep that 75% win rate. For those sorts of players, this sort of card is really, really bad. Yes, there are going to be times in which you dominate the board and you can trade into the 1/1s, but then you have to think you're probably essentially, for the 3 extra stats, you're healing their face for like, I don't know, 7, 8 damage. So, and then in the times in which you can't clear it off, giving them 1/1s is so much worse, like so much worse, as reflected in the score, than settling for just a 3-mana 3/4.
Yeah.
Right. Giving them options, and not just 1 minion, but 3 minions, and they can do whatever the hell they want with those, is really, really bad. So once again, this is one of those cards in which the stats work out just fine if you are doing vanilla stuff. I think the people that sort of make up these situations in which, oh, well, you can clear the 1/1s by trading stuff in, you're not going to have like 1/2s on the board, like triple 1/2s on the board to trade into it. So you're probably on average trading off stats on your other minions, like 1 health on your other minions, and like 8 face damage for these extra stats, which is totally not worth it.
Yep.
Like super not worth it. So even in the times in which you quote get value out of it, that is extreme anti-value. So there is no value here. Like there is no
value here is that your opponent has a big enough board that the 1/1s don't summon, or that you happen to want to play a board clear anyway on the same turn. And those are very limited situations in the arena, and you don't get that much value even if they trigger. All right, let's go on to the legendaries. So those are the bad cards. I think we spent enough time on them. We're not going to spend too much time on the legendaries, even if they are complicated, because you don't see them that much in the arena. And the legendaries here in Ashes of Outlands are not that good. They're okay. 127 is the best legendary, which is like fine for a normal card. 127 is what is 127? That's where we have like big ol' whelp, right? Like it's a good card. You want it in your deck, but for a legendary, it's like okay, fine. It's a Terran Gorefeed 3 mana, 3/4, Battlecry, destroy all friendly minions, Death Rattle, resummon them with a +1/+1. Pretty good. 3 mana, 3/4s are already good. Being able to, like, it only has 4 health, so it'll probably die pretty easily. And then you buff all of your minions +1/+1 after basically having them dormant for a while. You can also use it strategically, right, to destroy the ones that you want. The ones you destroy may have Reborn, or they may have, well, they won't have Reborn. But they may have, actually no, they may have Reborn, they may have Death Rattles, who knows, right? Like, so it's a decent card.
All right.
Next
we have
go for
Maev Shadowsong, 4 mana, 4/3, Battlecry. Choose a minion. It goes dormant for 2 turns. So you're giving up 2 stats. You're basically giving up a mana. It goes dormant, which is quite good. I think some people expect this to be much higher. So why isn't it much higher?
Well, if you remember, freeze is basically free now. So this is like, okay, so this is worse than a freeze in that you can't damage it in the meantime. It's better than a freeze in that you also remove the ability, so it can get you past taunts, and it can like get you past persistent abilities. But for the most part, it's more or less similar to freeze. So if you think about how freeze should not cost anything, this does 2 freezes.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it's about right.
Good.
Like, yeah, it's fine. It is okay to play on curve if your opponent has something that you can make dormant, because you basically, like, when you make something dormant, you've put it out of its position in the curve. So if you dormant a Yeti, for example, it pops back up on turn 6. What's a Yeti doing on curve on turn 6, right? So you're basically ruining your opponent's curve. This guy's not on curve either, but you're able to neutralize it. You can get like more value for it if you find a good target, but the amount of good targets in the arena for this beyond size is limited compared to like more combo-y or more interesting constructed decks.
Yeah. So this is like, we put this about as good as Deathwing. This is like about as good as Deathwing. And I think it's like fair. I can see this being a little bit higher, but when I saw this, I was like, yeah, I think it's fine. We'll see. Like, I see a lot of disagreements. I think it's fine where it is right now. But once we play with it a little bit more, maybe. Oh god. The next card is, as soon as I saw this, I'm just like, this is just Pyros. The artwork is just Pyros.
When I saw it, I thought they were bringing Pyros back, and I was really excited. And then I saw the ability, and I was like, all right, fine. It's okay, fine. 5 mana, 7/3, not great stats, but okay for 5 mana. It's not too terrible. And then the Death Rattle is it summons a 0/3 Ashes that resurrects the minion on your next turn. So like your opponent needs to like be able to hit into it. So if you're already up on the board, you put this out, you kill it off, then you get a 0/3 the next turn. If you're not up on the board, this dies to like 3 damage twice. And only one of those damages have any attack attached to it, so it's pretty vulnerable. So it's a pretty big swing card, and as legendary as kind of can be.
It's high swing, but once again, I think people are overestimating the amount of times that they're able to kill off an 0/3 Ash. Like, I think people, when they look at a card like this, is it great? No. There's gonna be some times in which it just dies and they can kill the Ash. But the payoff when they can't kill the Ash is so high. Like, getting double 7/3 bodies for 5 mana is so good. That's where the 120 score comes from. And you can't discount the fact that, like, it is not super easy to kill off an 0/3.
Yeah, right? Have you guys, you remember Nithog? Has anyone ever faced Nithog in the arena? Because he's been in the arena for a bit. When those 0/3 eggs come out that you want to remove on that turn, you don't always get to. You usually don't get to remove both of them. Now, this is only 1 egg, so you may get to. But still, there's a decent chance this thing's going to come back.
Yeah. Look, if they have the board, this really sucks. You can say that with like 98% of cards in existence. If they have the board, this isn't that great. So that's sort of it. Once again, people overestimate the amount of times they can clear something. That's just human nature. Like you see it with the 1/1s, you see it with the 0/3. I think people assume all the freaking time that they're going to be able to clear the 0/3. You're going to be able to clear a decent amount, but then when you don't, this thing is like ridiculous. It's amazing. So, yep.
All right, now for the card that people have been asking about because it's already in the arena, but we never put it on the tier list because it's not. It's in the Ashes of Outlands, and we didn't want to add it beforehand. Also, it's not good. It's a 6 mana. It's a Calthea Sunstrider. It's a 6 mana 4/7, and then every third spell you cast each turn costs 0. Because you'll be casting 3 spells so often in the arena.
If you do, you'll be on Trollton.
So yeah, it's not good. It's 75. The understated body, basically, with a minimally relevant ability.
Yep. Next, we have Magtheridon. This scores. We still need to score this.
Right? What? It's a 73.
We still need to score this. This is like one of those things that we actually need to still score.
What do you mean?
Like what? This card?
Yeah.
So this is a 4 mana 12/12 demon, dormant, battlecry, summon 3/1/3 enemy warders. When they die, destroy all minions and awaken. I don't exactly know what to put it, like how to think of this really. I don't really know.
So the algorithm figures out how fast the 1/3 enemy warders can die based on what the opponent can do to protect them, and also what you can do to try to target them. So the algorithm is advanced enough to know what happens, like what your opponent's capability is to protect something. It uses that for everything really, based on how valuable they are. But it gets especially relevant for things with persistent abilities on the board because you're trying to protect it, right? So for these guys, they're doing that, and then also for you, you're trying to kill it. So the algorithm also knows that. So it actually has a fairly good estimate of how long it takes to kill off the enemy warders.
I love how when we introduced this card, the 2 comments back to back. One comment, this is easily a 300, and the next comment, this is worse than this. So we have one person thinking it's 300. We have some person thinking it is significantly worse than a 73. I don't know exactly. This is such a weird card that for me, I'm just like, I don't.
And that's why we have an algorithm, because it takes a lot to think through this card and what all the implications are. But the algorithm can give it a good idea of when you can get it to trigger. And the reason it's only a 73 is because there are too many times in which you are dead before it triggers. Or the game is already done. But if you spend 4 mana doing nothing, you're probably the one dying, not the one winning. And also, if you are the one winning and you're playing this, well, why do you want to destroy your whole board? Like, to get a 12/12, but you would still be destroying your whole board. Like, 4 mana for a 12/12 plus destroying your whole side of the board is not exactly the best thing. So it knows all of this stuff, and it's just basically saying, look, you got to play when you're behind, and then you have to find a way to make it function before you die when you're already behind, and then you just spend 4 mana doing nothing.
Yep. And you can concoct crazy scenarios like this plus Hellfire, this plus Brawl, etc., etc. Also, this doesn't really work with Brawl. I saw the Brawl comment. I'm like, you know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen when you Brawl, right? Come on. So it's just like this plus Hellfire. And if you need that specific combo, man, it's really bad. I can give you 8 mana, 2-card combos that are really, really good. This is decent. Like, this is pretty good, right? But if we're making those situations up, okay, we can make some pretty crazy situations. But like I said, I'm not gonna think about this. This is one of those cards. I'm just gonna throw my hands up and be like, sure, whatever.
Also, remember, this card would be better, as usual. The ridiculous swingy cards, and this is a ridiculous swingy card, are better the worse player you are, because the swings help you more, and when it doesn't work, it hurts you less, because you are only winning 50% or 60% or whatever of your games anyway, whereas we assume a 75% win rate. Alright, so that's it. That was the last card. That's all your neutrals for Ashes of Outlands. Thank you guys for watching. We're going to go over class cards next, starting with the Demon Hunter, which is also conveniently the #1 class in alphabetical order. So we're going to get into that. And when we go over each class, we're going to talk about how they fit into the meta at the end of it, which brings back all the other cards. For Demon Hunter, it includes Basic and Initiate. For the other classes, it still includes Year of the Dragon cards that have been introduced. All right. Any shout outs you want to give before we end this?
All right. Shout out to our mods in this channel, minus Dr. Stein. They work very hard, except for Dr. Stein, and they really help us with, all the stuff that is not just streaming. We're talking about all of these cards. So love you guys. Thank you so much. Except Dr. Stein. Appreciate you guys. See you in the next video.